to order. This is the Athens Architecture Preservation Commission meeting, and it's Monday, and it is October 12th. So, first of all, we had minutes from our last meeting. Did everyone get a chance? And are there any additions or corrections?
I will move that those minutes be approved.
Very good. Second? All approve?
Aye.
Thank you.
Who seconded there, just for the minutes?
If anybody did. So we just all approved. We all said aye.
Pam, did you second that?
I
Just say
can.
yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Our next meeting is our next meeting is November 9th. Is that convenient for everyone? Or I think that's also a holiday weekend, if we will be here, because in the past we have been able to move our date a little bit. So everyone's planning to be here then, I think. Very good.
That serves me the best. Keeping it the same time.
Our next meeting is November 9th, 2020. Okay, let's get on with old business. And I think this is about our district expansion. Paul, do you want to say how that went when you presented it to the commission?
Sure. John was also present for that. City Council was very, they had some great questions about it, and we discussed with them what it means to be designated locally. We talked about some of the history of the Uptown District and how long it's been, since 1981 or 82, that it's been on the National Registry, and that we haven't seen, without having preservation standards, we've seen things change over time. Some have been improvements that we've seen, but also we've seen some things that we've lost and some things that have been altered into conditions that are not ideal for a historic district. Council was very supportive of what the commission was doing. They did bring it up for our first reading for the week after that. I believe it's had 2 readings, and it'll be on a 3rd reading as well as its public hearing next Monday, as well as with Siemens Grocery Store. We talked about that as well. They were also very supportive of Siemens, and they were Arian Smedley, who is the West Side ward representative for City Council. She was really enthusiastic to see historic preservation taking place in her ward. So she was very supportive, as was everybody else on council. So to my knowledge, both of those are in good shape looking forward. Of course, there's a public hearing next week. I'm unaware of any opposition that's come forward, but that doesn't mean that there's not people prepared to be at a public hearing next week.
Would you like any of us to attend the public meeting?
I don't think so. Generally, no, you certainly could if you wanted to speak on behalf of the ordinance. That being said, it passed unanimously by the preservation board, so I think it's a given that you all support it. Generally, it's not for those hearings. If you've ever been to a public hearing, it's not for a back and forth or any type of discussion. It is for members of the public to state whether they're for or against something and why. And then just leave it at that. Allow somebody's opinion to be heard, and let City Council take that into consideration as they deliberate. Members can also send an email directly to Debbie Walker or to Chris Nisley, as could the members of the public, to support or not support this. They could just send an email to Debbie Walker or to Chris Nisley, the president of council, and it would be submitted into the record. John, do you have anything else to add from your position? John did a great job presenting on behalf of the commission. I'll definitely want that to be heard. Thank you, John.
Well, I appreciate it, Paul, and you are a super duper person knowing what's going on in those meetings, because I didn't. but they were massively supportive. And I do think that they didn't vote. They just do 3 hearings. Is that the way it works? And then they vote after that.
Correct, right. They do 3 readings. The third reading will be a week from tonight. There's also a requirement under the ordinance that there be a public hearing, and that public hearing requires 30 days notice. So I believe the public hearing is also scheduled for next Monday. Typically what they'll do in that situation, they hold public hearings before they convene for city council in regular session. The public hearing can last as long as the public is there. If nobody appears, basically the public hearing will take a few minutes, and then they'll close the public hearing and they'll open up for a regular session of council.
I like the way they all do this when they want to talk.
Yeah, they're good at it. They're good at Zoom. They figured it out.
Now, is the public hearing being on Zoom, or is it going to be an actual in public hearing?
It will be online via Zoom, just like a city council meeting or the preservation board will be. If there's not a link for it yet, I'll make sure to I'll email a link to it to all members of the commission if you're interested, just for watching. You can also always watch city council members streaming online via the city's website, also on social media, on Facebook, on the city's Facebook page. And if you still have cable television, you can the government channel still broadcasts live too.
No, I've lost the government channel. I still have cable, but I don't have the government channel.
And you can see how great of a job they do organizing all of these meetings too. They're Ryan and Scott are sitting through all these public meetings on behalf of the city too. So.
You know, I'm waving my hand so I can talk. Now, assuming that, Paul, or the timeline for all this now would be, you're saying it would be another month, at least prior to this being enacted by the city?
Yeah, so what would happen, John, is after the third reading, then they'll vote. So in all likelihood, they will be voting next week, next Monday, assuming that they vote affirmative for it, and there's at least four members of city council who are voting yes. At that point, Mayor Patterson has to sign it into law. And that takes 30 days. Now he can sign it at any point, but the law doesn't, the ordinance does not become, unless they suspend rules and declare an emergency, then it takes 30 days after council's voted on it for it to become law. So we would see it in very early December, it would become law. No, excuse me. I've got my months wrong. Third reading would be on Monday, October 19, and so it would become law roughly Thursday, November 19.
Paul, you've seen a lot of these public hearings. Would you anticipate that there'd be opposition to this? Is there any signs of that?
Not that I'm aware of. You all did a great job of reaching out to property owners and have been discussing it for so long that I think most of the concerns are already out there. It wouldn't surprise me if there was property owners that you all have already met with who expressed some concerns there. If they still have those concerns or they don't feel that they're being addressed, it wouldn't surprise me if 1 or 2 people come. However, I haven't heard anything, Mark. Nobody has contacted me, and I haven't. No city council members have reached out and asked additional questions. A lot of times, though, that doesn't happen until that last week anyway. But people have had the opportunity to speak on this for a couple weeks now through all kinds of channels, and to my knowledge, nobody has.
Thank you all, especially you, John, for the meeting last week.
Yes.
You know, it's not what we really are looking for in the long run. I mean, this shouldn't, I don't think, hinder us from continuing to expand the local district like we've been working on for so long. It just looked like this was an easy one for people, especially the council, to swallow because it's already been established 30 years ago, 40 years ago. The thing that, a couple things related to this, and just the timeline that Paul is talking about, if it gets enacted by the 19th, the things that need to happen before then, we need to get the city application process done so that whenever people submit an application for a building permit to the city of Athens, the permitting documents reflect our involvement in the approval process. And I think Diggs has the information he needs. I don't know how we motivate this to get formalized so that if it does get approved, we have to have all our ducks in a row here to make sure that we are able to evaluate the properties in a expedient fashion. Now we do have, they have the information I believe they need. Unless Paul needs more, he can get a hold of me, or David can as well, to help establish that. I'm just talking about the paperwork that needs to be done. And then at the point that, say that a building does come under the review of our committee, we need to have some kind of a strategy in place. And I assume it would go through Paul, that we could at least get a subcommittee involved in a more or less, quick review for whoever the property owner might be, or an evaluation based on our, whether or not we would approve the work that was going to be done to that structure. You know what I'm saying? We can't just meet once a month and expect this to work. Mm-hmm. So there should be people on call, I think, somehow, because we don't know when an application is going to be submitted. It could be the day after this whole thing has been approved by council and gone into law, that the code office calls Paul and says, hey, we need a review from the Historic Preservation Committee. And just, I don't know if we all have to get involved, but I think one of the suggestions that was put into the package that at least I started to try to establish was that they contact the Historical Review Committee for a preliminary review. So we have some idea of what they're doing before it's a full-fledged drawing and finalized drawing in front of us that we might not like, or we might have suggestions for. So that preliminary review might need to be something that maybe, Guy and Pam, or two people or somebody looks at and reports back to the committee, via email, now that we can't really see each other. So that we can make this not a process which is going to slow down a project. Those are the things now that once we get our district approved, we have to be able to move professionally into the review and make sure that we don't become a source of stress.
Yeah.
On the process.
So, John, is there a timeline that's built into the legislation that council's dealing with for a preliminary review, a final review, a vote, an approval? And that how long?
It's a month. It's a month right now. And you know what, Mark, a month is not acceptable. I don't think.
Yeah, I'm looking that up right now just to confirm, Mark.
And we can't have people waiting to get a month to get a review from our committee. I mean, it'll take them 2 or 3 weeks anyway to get a zoning certificate normally, but we should flow right into that. We shouldn't be the one that the code office goes, well, we haven't got anything back from the historic people yet. We can't approve your project.
Don, my 2 cents is that we'd write some sort of instruction form that would be on file at the code office, and when people come in to get a building permit, they can be handed that instruction form, and at the time that they submit their building permit, code office would copy us on it and we'd set up the time. But have it, code office would set the meeting, and we'd come up with some plan. I'm presuming we'd meet monthly or twice a month if called, if needed.
So I put the.
How many of us would need to?
Oh, sorry, Cyrus. Go ahead.
Oh, I just had a quick question. How many of us would need to sign off on anything we reviewed? If it was only a couple of us, I have no qualms about having a quick meeting as needed.
So you would need to. There's a couple things. One of which to point out that if you're officially making a decision, voting on something, et cetera, that we need to make sure that that decision is made in public, and no ex parte communication between members. So if you do want to have a subcommittee or something like that, you can do it. We need to. I believe we can do it. I would want to double check with our law director. We need to make sure that there's not a quorum of members who are involved in that subcommittee to meet with a developer. The code actually gives up to 60 days from the time of application for the preservation board to act. That doesn't mean you have to take 60 days. It does encourage an applicant to meet with the preservation board to discuss prior to actually applying. So an architect might want to talk with either the board as a whole or to a committee of 2 or 3 people, or distribute all their plans, preliminary plans, to everybody to get some feedback. Any feedback, we want to make sure that that's part of the public record. Then there is a requirement that they do appear before the board as a body of 7 members, or at least a quorum of 4. And then upon that public hearing, or not a public hearing, but that public meeting of the board, then you have, within 15 days of that, you need to basically to act on the application, to make a recommendation, to approve it, to deny it, to approve with recommended changes, etc. So you've got at least, you do have 60 days, but that doesn't mean you need to have 60 days. One thing I thought we might want to do is, prior to it becoming law, we can sit down either at the November meeting and maybe invite David Riggs, our code director, to attend, or maybe John and I can meet with David and maybe another member, and we can just kind of go through a hypothetical scenario. Property owner comes in, submits an application for a zoning permit. They want to make significant alterations to a historic building uptown. Let's talk about what's the process on his end already, how long that typically takes on his end, to better understand his timelines, because there's a lot that goes into there's documents that are needed, there's information that's not correct. The city engineer needs to give input. They've got the fire department says that what they want to do just won't work based on their requirements. So to better understand that whole review process and making sure that preservation board can plug right in is really the key to it, I think. And so as long as we can fit within those timelines that David's already working in, or that an application's already working in, we'll be fine. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Paul, is there a mandated number to be on a subcommittee of a commission like this, like 3 people, 2 people? And what authority can we give to that subcommittee for a preliminary review?
Well, I think there's some flexibility in there as long as you don't have a quorum meeting outside of the public, the regular meetings or special meetings. As long as if we're having a special session and we've got a quorum or a regular meeting, we just need to make sure that there's public notification of those happening. If you have a subcommittee that you have authorized to meet outside of those meetings, as long as I will double check with our law director, Mark, just to be clear. But my thought would be, as long as nobody on that subcommittee is making decisions, that you're then going to bring forward to the committee, so to the whole body. So you don't want to basically say, well, if Mark and John and Pam have met with developer Y, and Mark and Pam and John say it's okay, whatever you're going to do, and we're going to make a recommendation. So as long as that doesn't happen outside of the public, out of a public meeting, you should be fine to give, provide comment and feedback. We'll need to make sure that any public comment and feedback is documented, though, for the file.
So, Paul, does the sunshine law then apply to that subcommittee as well, so that there can be public attendees at whatever that subcommittee meeting is?
I don't believe so, but any records, any emails, any notes, et cetera, are part of the public record. But I'll double check on that, Mark. That's a great question, and I don't want to say yes or no without getting a little bit more feedback on that.
Well, that could address John's issue of keeping the process moving faster if we had a subcommittee that could do preliminary meeting and a recommendation, and then bring it to the full board to.
Well, before we get that far, I was going to recommend that for the first couple of things that are submitted to us, that we all look at them and make sure we're all doing this the same way.
Good idea, Mary Ann.
Yeah.
There can be differences in how we look at things. So before we do our subcommittee, let's make sure we're all doing it the same way.
Yeah,
that would be not good.
To speed things up for these people, I wouldn't mind initially meeting twice a week or twice a month if needed. Mm-hmm. And particularly with the Zoom thing, I'm out of town a lot, but this is pretty easy. Just scheduling the time. So I'm more than willing to, set a second meeting as needed. And how much time do we need to notify the general public on that? If somebody has they submit an application and then we get the paperwork on it straight away, how much time?
Sorry, Guy.
Well, go ahead, Paul. I am asking you. How much time do we need to do the public announcements?
Generally 24 hours.
All right. Well, we can do that.
And that means, so ideally within 24 hours, we've posted an agenda, let everybody know that it's going to happen. And if it's online or something, that we have a Zoom link created.
Yeah. And we could do it the third Monday of the month if needed. And we'd also recommend that our people don't use that day unless they absolutely need it in the future when we're all meeting together.
First of all, Guy, I already did a checklist, kind of a introduction to what we're doing to be submitted. Hopefully, if the building is required to go before us, about what we are and what we're going to be doing and how this works, hopefully for people. But I still can't believe that we just can't give some, listen to something without being in a public domain that somebody was proposing. Because I don't think that we want to. Well, I guess we could ask them that it's an informal meeting. We wouldn't make any decisions, and even if it was two people, we could go, oh my gosh, this is, I don't know if that's going to work before they submit something formally. We're trying to prevent them from having to go formal here.
Right.
with an idea or approach that we know is not going to be successful.
Right. And the code already recommends in it. It doesn't require it, but it recommends that that an applicant, prior to applying, that they do meet with the preservation board to get feedback, so that they have some, draft plans already lined up, and that there's an opportunity there. I would see it like an architect's already working on the plans. They submit some draft documents to the preservation board that show exterior alterations and whatever materials that they're planning to use. You all have that. And then, a few days after you've received them, there is a preservation board meeting already scheduled, such as we have tonight, the regular meeting, or we can, if the preservation board wants it, we can expedite it and try to have that informal meeting set up, as a special session as long as we have 24 hours notice. It's public, but it doesn't mean people are going to attend it. You know what I mean, John?
Yep.
It's no different than this meeting right now. I'm looking, and there's no members of the public that are sitting in on this meeting. It's still being recorded, but it's just the preservation board, myself, and the government channel representatives. And so you'd have an opportunity to discuss there, give that initial comment, give that feedback if there's any concerns about the changes, or if it's not appropriate, let them know then so that they can make those changes prior to submitting to the code office. Assuming that they make the changes to the code office, at that point, it's, they already know what they need to do. You've already given them the feedback to say, this is what you need to do to be approved, or to get our vote. And then the meeting after that, the public meeting after that, should actually go relatively quick.
Good to me.
Yeah.
After all this happens, and just let's go through the whole process, and they go do the work. We still, the whole objective that we're here for is to issue what they call a certificate of appropriateness. Well, what the heck is that?
Is a real certificate that we make up and we issue. That's pretty simple. We just make them up.
Well, somebody has to do the certificate. And again, that's the city's probably responsibility to come up with whatever that, document is going to be. And that is not issued until after the project is completed, because as Pam and a lot of people who build things know, things change during the process. And boy, if it changed out of the scope of our approval, then that could be a sticking point in terms of us approving that certificate.
Wait a minute. I've got to jump in here a little bit. I can't imagine it working that way. They do the project and then we approve it. What happens if they inadvertently did change something and we're saying it's not approved? And let's say it's not a substantial problem, but don't we have to give the approval before based on the plans rather than the finished project?
Yes.
Correct. Yeah.
All right. Okay.
No, there's a, that's not the way I looked at that. You can't, add another story to the building and expect maybe us to say, well, oh, geez, and then never tell us about it. Or they might make significant modifications to what the exterior ends up because, well, we couldn't afford those windows, or we couldn't afford to do this, or we couldn't afford, so we cut it. We can't be expected to approve these things if they weren't the way they were initially submitted to us.
Okay,
unless they came to us and we gave them a revision. That's all documented again in the city's guidelines for our approval process.
John, the certificate of appropriateness it says in the code that it is issued within 15 days of their hearing with the preservation board. So that certificate of appropriateness is based upon the plans meeting the standards. Should an applicant do something when they're actually under construction that is in violation of their approved permits, and this would go for any permits for zoning, floodplain, we approve all of those things based upon the plans that are given to us. Land development, same with this. Should they do something at the time of construction that does not meet is not what they said they were going to do? There's one of two things happen. One of which is if it's caught, we try to address it at the time while it's under construction so that it's not a problem. If it is built, then there can be, it can go, what does it say here? It's, if there's a penalty, it needs to be remedied within 10 days of it being caught. And then if there's failure to comply, then you can get into the situation of actually somebody being fined, I think $150 per violation, which can be daily if it's not addressed. Just same thing with if somebody builds a 5-story building and they're only allowed to build 3.5, like there's a real problem there. We have to address it. But we would issue the permits based upon the plans, the certificate of appropriateness. And that's stated in section 4507, which you can see in the link in the chat. And then section B of 4507. It's under B4C. And it says if the application is approved, a certificate of appropriateness will be issued within 15 days of the hearing. So that's, the applicant needs to secure that certificate of appropriateness in order to start their project is what's important to note there.
So Paul, if they violate that certificate of appropriateness by doing something different than their plans, the consequence is a fine, possibly $150 a day, and that's all handled by the code office, right?
Correct, right. And ideally, everything gets remedied or, now within that, of course, there's always opportunity to try to work things out, to give somebody more time if they present and say, if you give me 90 days, I'll make it happen. Or if they get, there's always those situations that can come up. But as a general rule, yeah, Mark, there's an opportunity to start fining as needed. Now, we all try to avoid that and try to make things right. Our goal is not to fine people. And if the issue is windows or something, 4 days of fines, and you might as well have swapped out the windows before you got to that point.
Well, and it also says that changes in addition shall be in addition to any criminal penalty.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And not thereof. So if they don't, they might just say, well, I'm going to pay a $150 fine for the rest of my life. I don't care.
Very rarely does it come to criminal. Very, very rarely.
I know. I've never seen that happen anywhere. But they don't. There could be criminal penalties, and that would be brought by the city for nonconformance.
Yeah.
I don't think they do it for us. But
usually, what happens if there's federal money in the project, the federal money will be withheld.
And that's a good point, Mary Ann.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's something that we can think about too. And
right now, the federal. We're talking about local stuff here. We have to stand on our own 2 grand. There's been federal projects, but most of this, the things that are going on now in Athens, most of them have no federal involvement whatsoever. So it's going to be us looking at these things pretty much, I think, as the jurisdiction for historic preservation.
But Mary Ann, your point is about tax credits and things as well, correct, Mary Ann?
I didn't hear that question.
Your point was about if an applicant is trying to receive historic preservation tax credits or something like that, they would not be able to receive those tax credits if they deviated from the plans and it's no longer appropriate.
Yeah, CDBG money or anything like that, community development block grant, any of the federal monies, then it can be withheld. It usually isn't, but it can be. And by the way, certificate of appropriateness, would you like some samples that we can make up, or I can make them up and send them around and see which one the city would like to choose?
I'll make a motion that you give us your very best single sample. And that way you don't have to. Yeah. But,
Okay,
I second the motion.
thanks. Okay.
I am making that as a motion.
Oh, you are? Okay. Shall we vote on this motion? All in
should.
favor?
Uh,
Those opposed? Okay, that's passed. Do we have anything else to discuss? That I know you do, Pam. That's what I was going to say. I know we have another item here. Is there anything more on the district? If not, then we go to Pam and talk about the Joanne Prisley Award.
I don't have a lot to say about it other than, are we going to do it? Are we just abandon the church? Are we going to move on to another nomination? Should we? Is this a good time, or should we just sort of life becomes more normal? I kind of don't want to see it go away, because I think it's an opportunity for us to have a presence in the community that is not controlling, or is not a permit process, or is not something that people have to do, but it's a positive gesture. I don't know. What do you think, folks?
I think it's.
what about
great.
Stuart McDonald?
Stuart McDonald, that's getting done, but it's not done, right?
No, it's not.
Okay.
And my 2 cents, since I work uptown and I'm always seeing the Presbyterian Church, and man, they work hard keeping that building wonderful. I don't have a dog in this hunt, but that's the one that comes to mind to me about how hard they work keeping that building just perfect and historically accurate.
I agree with you, Guy. I think they do a wonderful job on that church.
Which church is that?
Presbyterian.
Corner of Court and
Door to
Washington.
your office.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, next door. Yeah, right next door.
I'm familiar with the church. I just wasn't sure which denomination it was off.
By the way,
I don't get uptown very much anymore.
can anyone see me, hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
we hear.
I've lost all of you. My Zoom has decided to go on strike, but I can hear all of you. So what the hell? That's good enough. I know what you look like anyway.
We can see you, Richard, still.
You can?
Yes.
Oh my God. All right.
Keep your shirt on.
I think that's a good idea with the Presbyterian Church, because I was just trying to think of something public that's, been, people have been talking about or thinking about, but the Presbyterian Church is maintaining, and that's important.
What's happening with the Catholic Church? Is that just
Who knows?
we're not going to go there?
I'm not doing
No, I mean, we're just going. Richard Vedder, is it okay to abandon that whole effort? Is that going to create a problem for?
I think they abandoned us. Marianne, don't you?
I think that's what happened, yes.
I think so.
Okay, that's fine.
They historically, have a slight edge over the Presbyterians in terms of length of being in town and so forth. But the Presbyterian congregation goes back to the very beginning of Athens. It's tied in intimately with Ohio University. It's a gorgeous structure. They're doing a wonderful job of maintaining it. So I'm all for. And by the way, I'm a Presbyterian, although a pretty bad one. So I'm all for the Presbyterians.
That's cute.
Richard,
Well,
the language on the plaque,
Yeah.
is that something?
That was what was one of the issues that we got into with the Catholic Church. I think the Catholic Church ultimately, the problem ultimately, I think, and Marianne may have a different perspective on this, came down to, I think there were obstacles maybe at the higher levels, because the local Catholic Church is owned, as all Catholic churches are, by the or most of them are, by the diocese, which is located in Steubenville, and I think there was some concern there, and maybe the priest, the pastor, Father Mark Moore, may have agreed with this. I think they're worried about. I think the main worry about the Catholic Church is they didn't want to be committed to something in terms of maintaining that structure that they might not be able to maintain over a long haul. Like all churches, they're having their challenges these days. In their case, they have two churches located 4 blocks apart, and that poses some issues. And so I really think moving on to the Presbyterian Church is probably the smartest thing for us to do.
And how do you spell us? Because if it were up to me, I'd spell us VEDDER. I'd ask that you are the point person.
Well, I don't know how I became the point person, but I'd be willing to work on this issue if you want me to. If the board wants to give some guidance. I was not even on the board when the Joanne Prisley Award was put into effect. One argument, by the way, for St. Paul's initially was it fit in rather nicely with Joanne Prisley, since she was very active in that church over the years, and it would be sort of a nice thing to do to have the first award go to her church. But I don't know that that's particularly critical anymore. She's passed away. Her son has passed away. I don't know. I think on historic grounds you can make a case for either structure.
Well, Rich, you are the point person because you volunteered to us that you're a Presbyterian.
Well, I'm sort of a wayward Presbyterian.
he's lapsed.
My wife belongs to the Catholic Church, and I have ties to the Presbyterian Church. So I have that unique quality about me, for whatever it's worth, which I don't think is very much these days. But
Well, Richard, I'm the same way.
yeah, good.
I'm a bad Presbyterian married to a good Catholic.
Yeah, John, and we both have a last name beginning with V, and we both have suffered throughout our lives from alphabetic discrimination.
Well, you got to the top of your class. I was always at the back.
Marianne, would you like me to make a motion that?
Yes, please.
Okay,
Yeah.
I would make a motion that Dr. Vetter is the communicates with the Presbyterian Church and begins a dialogue as to allowing us to award them this plaque and do a preliminary language for the what would go on the plaque.
Good.
And given what Richard described about the Catholic Church worrying about having to maintain certain standards if they receive this award, that's just poor communication on our part, because I believe there are absolutely no restrictions associated with this award. We'd like them to display the plaque. We'd like them to allow us to be public with the presentation of the award, but we are not saying, therefore, you can't change anything forever if you get this award. There's no restrictions. This is just a one-time thing that happens.
Sure.
Isn't that right?
That's
folks?
correct.
I'll second Guy's
But
motion.
I don't think they understood that well. So I don't think they
No.
understood that very well.
Yeah,
Because
Marianne, you were involved in some of the discussions, and some of the others were as well. And it was a unsatisfactory discussion. I mean, they were very nice. The Catholics were. They showed us their sanctuary. They gave us. Father Mark gave a nice tour of the history of the sanctuary. I thought it was very nice, but I think there was something along the way that led them to become less enthusiastic about it. And if they don't want it that badly, and they're sort of, there were also some debate where they were going to put a plaque. They didn't want to put a plaque. They wanted to put it inside their church, which concerned us a little bit. We thought it should be publicly displayed where somehow it could be the public, general public could see it, not merely the parishioners of that church. And that may be an issue, might be an issue with the Presbyterians too. I don't know. But I will do whatever you wish, but I'm willing to talk to the Presbyterians. I think it's a pretty good idea.
I'll second Guy's motion.
thank you. Is there any more discussion on this? I do have one thing to say. Rich, if you would like me to go with you.
Yeah, I would.
Okay. I can.
Why don't the two of us go, and we will cover all the religions and all the bases, and we politically, I think it's smart to do it that way. And I'm not quite sure right now who at the Presbyterian Church is the appropriate person to talk to. But we'll figure it out.
I'll bet John Katowski has something to do with all this. I mean,
He does not, John.
does not.
No, John Katowski does not. No. I
Marianne,
think
I'll accept that.
the pastor of the Presbyterian Church is a lovely man, and you could contact him. I think explaining that we are a committee that wants to make an impact on our historic district in Athens and wants them to be part of our team by receiving this award and allowing us to acknowledge them for their effort in maintaining the structure with historic preservation in mind. Again, no restrictions on our part, no conditions on our part. And I would even absent
Beautiful, Pam. Write that down, please.
I would, no, you read it. You can look it up online. I would absent condition that we have to have this plaque displayed outside the building. There's already a little plaque on that building that
Yes.
historic designation. I think if it turns out that we put some sort of plaque inside, that's just fine. Let's just do it. I think the press release, I think us then in the future being able to refer to it as, oh, well, the 2020 or 21 Priestley Award went to blah, blah, blah. And when we disseminate information, we'll have that as our action. And then it will be followed by another one. So I think we should be flexible in our requirements.
Sure.
Thank you.
Marianne, do you mind if I call the pastor or
Fine.
somehow contact him and maybe set up a time for you and I to go together and meet with him?
That'd be lovely. I think he may have heard some about this because a friend of mine is very close to that family, and she knows about the Catholic Church and how they didn't want to accept it, and I think that she would help too by getting the Presbyterian Church.
Sure. Well, we have mutual friends, Marianne, who are active in that church.
Yes,
So we
yes.
we can work on it. I'll call you
Okay.
after separately in the next day or two.
Very good, very good.
Marianne, I'll go ahead and accept that as a friendly amendment that you be part of that group also.
Thank you. And I just want to say we should vote on this too.
That we should do that. But one more thing I wanted to add, if you don't mind. Pam,
Yes.
I won't die if it isn't on the outside of the building. But to me, that's kind of important. It
Fine.
So don't give up on that real fast. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. All in favor of this latest, that we want to contact the Presbyterian Church? Is that everyone give the sign of yes or no? Aye for yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
nays out there? Okay. I think we have passed this. So, thank you. Thank you. So I that's good. That's a good thing to do. So, okay, there is no new business, I understand. Announcements and updates. I don't think we have any more announcements other than the city council meeting next week.
Marianne, can we just back up really quick? There
Sure.
should be for new business. It's on my agenda. Maybe it's not on the public, but Pam asked for to begin a conversation about better coordination with the university. I put that on as new business, Pam. I'm not sure if that's what you were intending, though.
Yeah, I already forgot about it. So that's why we write these things down. Great opportunity for us to rekindle our relationship, to enrich our relationship, to nourish our relationship with the university, because they undoubtedly are looking at having to really cut corners and perhaps mothball structures as the results of COVID and all of the nonsense that's going on start to show up. We already know the financial implications. So I'm assuming that we want to just be one of the voices that's heard to say, well, okay, of course you have to do these things, but please save this, or think about this, or here we are, and this is what we want to praise you for what you do from specifically the historic preservation point of view. And so, I'm thinking, there's Shauna, of course, and we can rekindle our relationship with Shauna, but invite someone, or Shauna can help identify someone who may want to come and sit in on our meetings or be part of the discussion. It's, as far as real estate goes, and as far as the character of our city, that's it's so much is the university. And I feel that it's vulnerable right now. So I wanted to make sure we started talking about that too.
Pam, who is the woman that is like their planner now? She's come to a few other.
Shauna. Right, that's Shauna, whose last name I can't remember. Boland. Shauna Boland, yes.
She seems to be wonderful, I think. Could we invite her to a meeting?
Please.
Well,
anything to just keep the dialogue open, keep the information flowing.
Well, my 2 cents is that we plan on inviting her to our next real meeting. Hopefully that'll be fair.
Good idea, Guy.
I have a meeting scheduled with her next Monday morning on a few items. If you'd like, I can bring this up and ask if she can attend the November meeting.
Pam, are there other key players with the university real estate other than Shauna that should be involved in some way in our discussions? Or we start with her and see where it goes?
They're all gone, Mark. there isn't anyone that I have a relationship with anymore. Those people, those units, those planning units, they've changed. They're gone. So we would need to find out who it is that we want to talk to. And at one point, a couple of years ago, our committee was talking about establishing a relationship with Nellis, President Nellis, and I still think that's a good idea too.
Pam,
And
if I may add, I think it was an excellent idea of guys to invite Shauna Bullen in principle. But as you point out, the university is undergoing very significant changes, including over 400 staff being let go. And I know that there are talks of changing who's going to be in what unit and what is going to be done and what isn't and all. I think maybe we should talk, at least make our first pass at Nellis himself and say, who should we be talking to about this? Because there's been, I don't want to go into details, but I've heard Shauna Bullen's name mentioned in some discussions about personnel and so forth. And I think maybe we would be best to go to the president first and ask him. If he doesn't respond, we can talk to Shauna. And this isn't negative towards Shauna. I don't even know Shauna very well, but as I say, she may not have the same role now as she did 6 months ago or a year ago. I'm not sure. Things are changing so much, as you pointed out. There is a director of real estate, for example, to get to Mark's point.
right, I've met him. I know.
And he is the help me, Mark. You know her, Appalachian Ohio Foundation of Appalachian Ohio's the husband of the director. You know.
Yes.
You know who it is.
I just went brain dead on his name, but yeah.
Brooke.
Yeah, but his name is Brooke, Dominic Brooks. And he may have a role in all this. I don't know. His office is next to Shauna's, I think, and I don't know who runs who these days. So,
well, I think Deb Schaefer, another person that we could approach.
Yeah.
I would I think Dominic works for Deb Schaefer. He's under Deb Schaefer, probably.
Well, everyone's under Deb. There are some people in the university that thinks that Nellis is under Deb Schaefer.
Yeah, could be.
But Liz, I think your point is go as high on the food chain as you can.
And make at least
the best person to make the contact. Would it maybe be Steve Patterson? Because I think he has regular visits with the university president, right, Paul?
Yes, that's not a bad idea. Ask Steve to, I'm willing to talk to Steve, if you are too, Mark, any of us. Paul can do it. Just say next time they have a meeting, why doesn't Steve say that the preservation board would be very interested in having a more active discussions with the university about historical preservation, and see what the President Nellis has to say.
Well, and the president,
I think that
might suggest that Dominic and Shauna and several people come to a meeting to have that discussion.
Yeah, sure.
Well, we shouldn't invite them to just any meeting, because if we drag all those people into a meeting, we better have something at that meeting worthwhile to talk about, rather than
Yes.
So be a little bit mindful of that. But I think, Mark, that was a lovely idea to have Steve sort of start the invitation process with Nellis and just say, this is and I don't know, Paul, if you want to talk to him, if you feel comfortable talking to Steve, of course you feel comfortable talking to Steve, but about this, saying that we're interested in having the university know that we exist and what our purpose is, and to be part of our team, to work towards maintaining an historic presence in our town and our city's architecture, of which the university is such a huge part. Do you feel comfortable, Paul?
I'm happy to do it if the board would like me to. I don't, I communicate with Mayor Patterson all the time, so I can bring this up with him. That being said, if a member of the board would prefer to do it, just to communicate with the mayor, that's fine as well. Whatever you prefer is fine with me.
I think you're the guy, Paul.
Yeah,
All right.
you talk to him all the time.
Yes.
Why don't you do it?
I'll touch base with him tomorrow.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Good idea, Mark.
Yes, that all sounds great.
So just, can I double check really quick? So my request to Mayor Patterson, I'll be asking him to, next time he meets with President Nellis, to at least have a few minute discussion about the Preservation Board's interest in having a university representative try to come to some of their meetings on some sort of regularity. Who should that person be that President Nellis would like to have at the meetings? Okay.
That sounds great.
Okay. Got it.
Thank you. One question, speaking of that, we had a large class that had requested to attend our meetings, but they haven't come to any of them, have they, Paul, that I'm aware of?
Not that I'm aware of, at least not yet. Maybe they came to the September meeting, but we had a lot of communication issues. There were a lot of connectivity issues at that meeting.
Yes, thank you. I know.
We can all remember, yeah.
But
It was a
anyway,
very brief meeting. It was only 17 minutes or something like that.
Oh, that's the kind of meeting I like.
anyway, does anyone else have anything to add to anything we've discussed tonight? If not, then I think we've got some really good ideas from tonight's meeting. And I think it's time that we adjourn this meeting.
So move.
Everyone-
Aye.
Adios.